again, Yud Chet in Yaakov, Brachov, we were discussing this guy who had a fight with his wife, and a chassid who had a fight with his wife, and he went to the cemetery to hide, as it were. The Iyun Yaakov, I believe that was who it was. Yes, he had an interesting explanation, which I just want to give. It says that why did he go to the cemetery? Because he was afraid that perhaps he couldn't withhold from having more of an argument with his wife, so he didn't want to do this, and so that's why he left. That's number one. Then on top of that, why didn't he go to another house? Okay, you understand what the question is, Mr. Arnson? You understand the question? That was, you went to this guy, a chassid, Erev Rosh Hashanah. Yeah. He's trying to be. He went to the mikvah already. He's going to a place which is tumah, the ultimate in spiritual impurity. Okay, and yet he runs there. So the question that the Iyun Yaakov asks is, why didn't? Okay, so he wants to leave his house because he doesn't want to continue the fight. He doesn't want the fight to go crazy with his wife. He's having an argument. Fine. His wife is yelling at him because he gave his dinar away. But why go to the cemetery? Why not go to another house? Okay, understand that? It's an interesting question. So he said he didn't want to do that because they didn't want to the neighbors to speak and to say, to figure out, oh, they're having a fight, that's why he had to run away, and that would cause more animosity in the system. So rather, he says, he went to the cemetery so that nobody should know that it's because of an argument with his wife that he left his house, and because of this mitzvah, that he had a fight with his wife because of the mitzvah of giving tzedakah to the poor person. So that's why he goes into a place where nobody's going to be at least that's the assumption, and in the reward of that, he gets to hear the conversation that we heard last week. Now, if you remember last week, what happened was the spirit said to the other spirit, let's go wander the world, go behind the curtain, as it were, and hear what's going on. So the second spirit replied, I can't go because I'm buried in this, what do you call it? A matting of reeds. And so we said from there that the rabbis explained that the reason that she couldn't go was because in order to escape for the nefesh, the neshama, to totally escape the body has to be decomposed. You asked a question last week, by the way, if it means just the flesh, the answer is yes. Just the flesh, not the bones. I found that. So it's just the flesh that has to disappear. Once the flesh goes away, even though the bones are going to be there, because we said the bones are there forever. They last a long time, unless you have the skeletons that people are digging up from, they claim, millions of years ago. Okay, so it doesn't mean that the soul is still tethered to that. Once the meat is gone, or the flesh is gone. Okay, but this matting of reeds that apparently retarded the
disintegration,
decomposition of the body. Okay, so that's what happened. So she says, you go and you tell me what's going to happen, and she comes and she says, and she does. So next year, for some reason he comes back the next year. Okay. Oh. So he says, Lashana Acheret, the next year. He had a good inside trader 1 year, so let's get the information next year. Lashana Acheret, the next year, Halach, he went again, and he spent the night in the cemetery. And he heard the same two spirits talking with each other. So one said to the other, Bo, come, v'nashub ba'olam, and let's roam the world. V'nishma me'acharei pargod, and we'll hear from behind the curtain. Ma paranio ba'ala olam. What misfortune is coming to the world? Amrala, she replied. The friend replied, Chaverti, my friend, lo kacha martilach. Did I not already tell you any yechola that I cannot go? Shani kavorov machatzelet shalkan, because I'm buried in this matting of reeds. So why did she have? Why? What's going on here? Why did they have to come back a second time and have this conversation? So the rabbis explain that the first spirit who was saying, "Let's go and let's wander and find out what's going on." The first is, and her friend said, "I have matting of reeds, and therefore I can't go because I'm still not decomposed." She said, "Well, maybe by the second year she would already be decomposed." That's why she comes back a second time, says the same thing. Ella, but so the person continues. Ella, I should say spirit. Ella l'chiat, but rather you go. Umasha at shamat, and that which you hear. Bo'u v'imruli. Come back and relate it to me, whatever you hear. By the way, it's interesting also because I'm just giving this for a grammatical point. It's using the feminine. At. So people would automatically assume this is two girls. Yeah. Not true. It's talking about the ruach, which is going to be an at. The neshama, and so on and so forth. That's the feminine. So that would be why it's feminine. It's not that two girls here. It's not necessarily two girls. It could be, but it's not necessary. Yeah. But it's okay. So halcha v'shata uva. So she went, roamed, and returned. Fa'amra lala chaverta, and her friend said to her, chaverti, my friend, ma shemad me'acharei pargod. So, what's the new news? What do you hear from up there? Amala, she replied, Shamati, I heard, they call Hazareya Bereviya Shaniha, that all that the crops that anyone plants this winter at the time of the second rain will be blasted. Shidafa Malket Oto, the dry wind will blast it and it's going to die. So Halach, the Reviya Rishona, so hearing this, he went and planted at the time of the first rain. Shekol ha'olam kulo nishtaf. Everyone's crops were blasted. The shalol lo nishkaf, but his were not blasted. Okay, you got that? So why were they blasted? What's the difference between the first and the second? So Raj will explain is this that crops planted at the time of the first rainfall will have grown upright and stiff by the time of the second rainfall. Should it hail at that time, the crops will be broken and destroyed. But the crops planted at the second rainfall, that's the first one. It's the other way around. Okay. That was the first case, I'm sorry. The wind only affects the soft plants that have recently been planted. In other words, here you have a strong wind coming through. So if it had grown already in the first rain, in the first time, so then it's going to be strong enough to withstand the wind. If you didn't yet plant it, so then it's going to be killed. Okay? So now what happens? The wife suddenly wakes up. Amalo Ishto. And this guy's wife said to him, why is it that last year everyone's crops were destroyed by hail? But yours were not destroyed. And now that everyone's crops were blasted, and yours were not blasted. So he told her the whole story. Okay? So they said it was not more than a few days later when a quarrel broke out between this pious woman's wife and the mother of that child whose spirit had overheard in the cemetery. So Amrullah, and the cause of the quarrel, the wife said to her, come and I will show you a daughter buried in a matter of reeds. Okay? So apparently it's a girl. Now we know for sure that it's a girl who's buried there. And so, but that's what's going on. his biggest mistake, as we're going to find out, was don't ever tell anybody where you get insider information, including your wife, because you're going to lose your source. Okay. Let me just see if I'm missing anything so far. Okay. So then what happens is, now the next year, halach v'lam b'beit gvara. He again goes and spends the night in the cemetery. So this is the third year in a row, Erev Rosh Hashanah. He's going, he wants to hear what's happening. So far he had two, you have, what we have, the Farmer's Almanac, that tells us what's going on. He has a better source. It's right every single time. Okay, so he goes to the third year. And again he had the same two spirits conversing with each other. They come back every year. It's a nice get together. Amrullah, one said to the other, again, same line. My friend, let's roam the world. Maybe you're, again, you have to remember, each year that the first one's coming back was buried in her shachrichim, in her shroud. Since she is totally decomposed, she's free. And so she comes back to get her friend, and she's each year she's saying, maybe you're free now, maybe the thing, I know you're buried in matting and reeds, doesn't matter, but maybe now you found this, it took you a little longer, maybe you're just, maybe you are decomposed at this point. That's why she keeps having the same speech. So what happens? Amrullah. I'm sorry. So v'nishma mechorei pargod ma'aparon olam, and we'll hear what's going to happen, what misfortune will come to the world this year. Amrullah, she replied, "Chaverti hanichini, my friend, leave me be. Devarim shebeni benach, words that we have spoken amongst ourselves in the past, kevar nishmu ben achayim, have already been heard among the living. In other words, we can't speak anymore. That's no good. So what's the whole, by the way, why do we have to go through this whole thing? For the end result. Alma Yada, apparently the dead do know what is spoken by the living, since the spirit was aware of what her mother had been told. Okay? So then, it's, the Gemara says, no, that's not a proof. It says, Dilma inish acharina shekib, maybe another person died in their interim, bi'azil va'amalahu, and went and told them about it.
And told these two spirits.
Right. So maybe somebody's giving you information. It could be that. Could be other thing. Okay? So it's an interesting that the Gemara ends off that, saying it could be this way, it could be that way. Fine. Okay. So that's number one. So he says, where is it? Okay, so it's clear. I think that's a pretty clear thing we have. I forget if there's anything else I saw already. We did that. Okay. Any questions on that?
So, the third year.
Yeah.
So the one that was in the mat, the reed of Matt of Riedler.
Matt reading.
Said, leave me alone because the living already know about what we discussed.
Correct.
And so the Gemara says that indicates that the dead know what's going on among the living, but it answers itself and says that perhaps someone else died. Right. And told them.
But
so in other words, they wouldn't know what's going on amongst the living unless that
right.
happened.
But first, let's remember one thing. Why do they have to go through this whole thing? If you remember, originally it said that one cannot. You had the story of Rabbi, who was walking and told him to pick up his sisters. Rav Chia told Rav Yochanan, pick up your sisters during the. Put them away.
Because the dead
know
what's going on.
The dead,
today,
right, you're insulting them. So he said, well, what are you talking about? They don't even know what's going on. He said, well, if you learned once, you have to learn again, and so on and so forth. And so then they want to give a proof that really they do know what's going on. And the proof is this story. So then at the very end, the Gemara says, you don't have to say that they knew it. The Gemara answers this. It also gives an alternative. It's an alternate statement. It says you don't have to say that they know what's going on based on what we're doing. It could be that somebody died who knew the story and told these two spirits or these neshamot that, hey, you can't. You have to be more quiet. You have to be more discreet. So it's not necessary. The Gemara says you can't prove from this particular story that they know. We're not arguing whether or not they know, but you can't prove it from this particular story. That's all. Which I think is interesting too, because in most cases we want to. There's what do I want to say? Remember the three levels you have. You have the neshama, you have the guf, and you have the ruach, right? The neshama is that which is the totally spiritual part of us. The guf is the materialistic part, but the ruach is the tether. Okay, so I have that ruach that's holding this me to this body. Well, apparently, I mean, if I'm going to take this, try to put it into a rationalistic schematic here. Schema, the even though the body is totally decomposed, all the flesh is gone, for some reason this ruach can still come down and be connected to this body, still has it as a tether, and now can communicate with one's friend or one's neighbor. Doesn't necessarily have to be a friend. It could just be a neighbor in this. Maybe they got together and the neshama met up in Gan Eden. They said, "Hey, I like you. Let's get together. We'll meet once a year for a cup of coffee. We'll go and I don't know." But it's a very interesting concept that it seems, regardless of everything, that neshama and ruach together still somehow is connected with that body. I don't know how that works, but it seems that's what's going on. And if I don't, so can you imagine now if we would take the Egyptian the mummies, and they say that if you would take the covering off the mummy, the body is pretty well preserved, right? Am I correct with that? Which means that the neshama never could leave. It's continually tethered to that body. It's never free. Talking about being on a leash. Okay. So if we start putting all these preservatives in ourselves, like we do, think about how much preservatives we throw into our body we ingest from all the food that we have. We have a lot of preservatives. That's why they say, by the way, that with all the hormones that we inject cows with hormones, we put hormones into a lot of things, growth hormones. They say that's why the kids are maturing, sexually maturing much quicker, because we're having all this gene manipulation. More than that, we're ingesting poisons into our system voluntarily. Okay, and so that's also changing some of our constitution. And so who knows how long it's going to take us to decompose? We could be really torturing ourselves this way.
The bigger picture. So we're also getting out of this that there certainly is such thing as a spirit world. We call it the ruach, is I guess what we as living human beings could possibly be able to experience, as we were talking about, I think last week, either through a dream or perhaps through some other state of consciousness of semi-awareness or something, like apparently is in the story. And that somehow they do, the spirit world, they do seem like they have a pipeline one way or the other to the earth.
Yeah, no. Once, remember what we say, and I said this last week, that every night our neshama goes and gives a report to God, or the court, and says what we've done, what we haven't done. So the old question is, wait a second, if our neshama leaves our body, we should instantaneously die. The answer that this Gemara is presenting us is no, it's not true, at least what the Maharsha is explaining. No, it's not true, because the Ruach is the tether. That's what holds us together. So the neshama can go back to the Beit Shamala, the court above, and still be connected to my body because I'm not decomposed, thank God. Okay. So that tether is there. So when I wake up, I pull the tether, the neshama has to come back in. Okay, and we have to work together and be a unit. But while I'm asleep, my neshama goes to Gan Eden. Since it's in Gan Eden, I could hear a lot of things. It could be, it could be your prophecy. Again, not knowing what is prophetic and not knowing what is the pizza is a problem. You know what I mean by the pizza, the food, the children, whatever I ate. Not knowing or not knowing the argument to have it with whomever. So remember, our dreams, most of our dreams are my mind working something out. It may take a little while for it to work out. It could end up 3 months later in my mind. You know, that's what I'm saying. We don't know what is prophecy. We don't know it's being worked out through our mind. Because what happens is we suppress things. We suppress a lot of things. Bill got yelled at by his principal 30 years ago, and he's having post-traumatic stress. And now suddenly he has a dream, and he's either, and I'm sure you've had these dreams, where you were supposed to give a test, and you didn't write the test up, or you remembered that you forgot the test, and you didn't, or you had to take a test yourself to get your doctorate, whatever the case is going to be, and you still have to write it, right? All these stress-related dreams, and here we are, nowhere near that. And you're thinking, why would I stress back to that?
Yeah.
What's going on with me? You know, and so you have to, if you're like most people, you ignore it. It's really we don't think about our dreams. It was stupid dream,
Right.
But it's but if I start thinking really what stressed me out is an anxiety dream. So what's going on here? Or of course the ultimate anxiety dream is when you walk out and you realize you're naked. And you know that's the ultimate anxiety dream. And the other ultimate dream is when you're flying, when you see yourself flying. Suddenly you're just flying through the air.
What about the dream experience of falling down an endless pit or something?
That's anxiety. That would be anxiety.
I read that's your mind recalling coming down the birth canal.
Okay, I don't know.
Or
could be.
Relates to stress.
Could be, but I'm saying that's
sure
anxiety.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, you have the other dream where I'm floating or I'm flying or I'm doing something. That is a freeing dream. That dream, they say, you know, obviously I'm not going to fly. No matter how much you jump, you're not going to fly. You're going to fall. I wouldn't advise it. Okay? What goes up will come down. He's right. I'm not testing Newton's theory here, but it's but that's a dream where I'm freed. Something was good in my life, as it were. But really, as I'm saying, most of our dreams are a reflection about what happened to us or what we are thinking. Period. That's clear. I don't need Freud to do that. I told you, at the end of this Gemara it has a dream interpretation, and that's perfect. But it's we wouldn't get to it, not now. Yeah. But it does do that. But the main thing is, dream is basically what I was thinking. But at the same time, there is a potential for prophecies. My problem is what was prophetic, what wasn't, what do I listen to, what don't I listen to. So that's really a hard thing to figure out.
I realize that there are scientific, physiological explanations for dreams as we're just coming out of the deep sleep, and the process of waking up is when we have these dreams. So would that correspond to when the Ruach is trying to pull back in that tether to bring the Neshama back down, and so now Neshama's up here experiencing whatever, and you're on the verge of waking up, and it's bringing them back down, and maybe there's a communication going on there.
Yeah, could be. Because I don't know. That is when you would receive prophecy, when you're in that relaxed state. So that's why people who meditate, when they get into that state, they're very relaxed. When I'm relaxed, I cease to tune out things. I'm not tuning out. I've tuned out what I've tuned out, but now my mind is open to everything. So again, I have to know what is my fantasy, what's going on in my imagination, and what is reality. That's very difficult. If you don't have a good teacher, and I don't know who would be a good teacher for that, but if I don't have a good teacher for that, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference. Which is why, again, most people will ignore their dreams, because saying that it was either anxiety, or they had a good time, or it's just a pleasant dream. And there was, we don't put much stock into it. There are those people who do put a lot of stock into dreams. But for the most part, I would think that 99% of human beings don't put that much into it. Now I'm being really harsh when I say 99%.
Yeah.
I don't think it's higher than that though. If I'm wrong, let somebody email me and tell me I'm wrong. But it's I don't think it's more than that. We'll have to stop there.
Close.
Yeah. This would come under that category. What are the two greatest difficulties in reaching the truth? Mm-hmm. And one is when you don't have enough information, and the other is when you have too much information.
Correct.
But in a dream, you have too much information. You have to sort out. Maybe it's 1/60th.
Yeah.
But where is that 1/60th?
Right.
That's a terrible problem to try and figure. Right. And the other is when you're just lost and you have no input. You have no idea where to go to find.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I said. Most people will ignore it. I mean, it was a nice dream. It was a nice thought. When you see something coming out, and that's our deja vu, we say, "Oh, didn't I experience this already?" You probably did. It's probably the dream that you had, or you get a flashback to that dream, and then you can say, "Oh, wow, was that prophecy, or did I do this before?" Even there, you're not sure what happened. But it's something, like I said, it's something we all have to. The Gemara accepts it as a reality. I wouldn't buy stock based upon Ruach telling me that, hey, invest in Gok Enterprises. I just wouldn't do it. But it's if there is a Gok Enterprise. But it's you have to, like I said, you have to be aware. You have to be self-conscious of what's going on. And if you meditate and you become proficient in meditation, and like I said, have a good guide for that, then you'll be able to tune in a little more potentially. But again, I still wouldn't take stock advice from the spirits.